Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hello friends, I am so excited to be bringing you my week 28 reading wrap-up, which this week involves a couple fan fictions. I am in the midst of the fan fiction readathon, but don't worry if you're not interested in that. I have plenty other books that I fit in as well, because I had some audiobooks that I got to, as well as some arcs that I was very excited to read, and I am so excited to share all those with you. First up, I wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who checked out my Etsy shop. I have some lovely book sleeves that are in stock there right now, as well as some keychains and a couple of zipper pouches too. This is just something that I love to do in my free time. I love finding these adorable patterns and making cute little book sleeves. They're really simple ones. I had some people ask about ones with zippers and buttons and like custom designs, and currently that's not what I do. I'm pre-making stuff and then sharing it just because I only have so much time to devote to it, and so I do it on my free time and then upload what I have. I currently have these adorable designs. I had a restock of a few of these Beauty and the Beast ones. If you're interested in those, I have some lovely pretty strawberries, maybe for you Ada lovers out there. Also, it is the Harry Potter readathon, so I have some really cute little Harry Potter designs in there, as well as just some fun floral patterns. I love this one. This is what I have my Kindle in right now. They're so cute, and I do have a coupon code that will always be going for my viewers. That is the Book Refuge 10, and you'll get 10% off of your order. If you are a Patreon, definitely check out Patreon. There's a post a little ways down that has a special code for you guys to use that I would be delighted to give. But thank you so much for supporting me. Really, I'm only looking to make enough money to pay for the fabric and my time with it. So I definitely will have some sales going on, and I also have some restocks that will be coming up. My hope is to do like monthly or maybe twice a month restocks, just because I don't want to devote too much time into it and go nuts with it, but I also love making these, so I definitely will be doing more of them and experimenting with some designs. I had a request to do a Kindle scribe size sleeve. Now that definitely takes a lot more fabric, and I also would want to put a button on those ones, which I'm not the most talented at, but just because the Kindle scribe is very slippery and I wouldn't want it to like fall out. So that design will probably be a little more expensive obviously than one that's this size. But I have some awesome fabric coming in this week that I'm so excited to do stuff with. Let me say, if you love Fourth Wing or Yellowstone, to definitely, even if you don't want to buy something right now, go to my shop in the description below and favorite my shop so you get notified when I have updates, because I have a feeling those ones are going to sell out pretty quickly, or at least I hope they will, because I'm pretty freaking excited. So that's enough of self-promotion, but I'm not going to stop doing it. That's what small business owners have to do. We have to promote ourselves out there. I also want to say a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members who support me and help keep this going. If you want early access to episodes, including my Outlander recaps, these weekly reviews, my taboo trope recommendations, all of my channel members from the dedicated diva level and above get early access to my videos, as well as monthly live chats. Patreon actually gets exclusive videos, as well as helping me choose books that I read each month. So I'm very excited to be, that's been going now for like a year and a few months, and it's been amazing. So, all right, enough of rambling. Let's get into it. We have 9 books to talk about today, and I'm very excited for it. So here are my notes right here. Down here, I'll be looking at these, and let me scooch over a little bit so I can put a picture up, because the first book that I finished was The AntiHero by Sarah Kate. This was an arc. I'm a part of Sarah Kate's arc team, and I feel so blessed to be. This was her newest release. It is outside of the Salacious Players Club. Her first book in the Good Brothers series, and boy, did I have a great time with this one. I really, really did. This one is about Adam, who is the oldest son of a minister, more so even like a televangelist, I would even call him. He runs a mega church. There's a podcast and a TV show and books that happen, and Adam is kind of his right-hand man. In the beginning of this, he ends up, first he meets this woman at a diner, and they end up kind of having breakfast and talking to each other. And she seems a bit like a bad girl, but he is kind of charmed by her, and they have this interesting interaction. And she ends up actually giving him a card to the club that she co-owns, which turns out to be a kink club. And it's a club that he's heard his father was going to try to shut down. And when he ends up finding some more information, he ends up going to this club, and he is so unprepared for what he finds. He finds his father at this club fucking someone there. So not only cheating on his mother, but going against everything that he's been teaching from the pulpit all these years. And Adam just feels his world spin out beneath him. And also, his father doesn't even react with shame or any trepidation about being caught out. He beats Adam and threatens him that he'll lose everything if he tells. Sage also finds this to be very disturbing, and her and Adam end up hatching a plan to ruin Adam's reputation, and in the process ruin his father's as well. And so they decide to make fake sex tapes together and release them on this app that you can share those on. It's supposed to be some kind of like porn app or something like that. And so they're supposed to be fake, but of course the fake part doesn't last too long. So yeah, this book was very interesting. I will say, for some people who might be worried about the religious aspect of it, I didn't find this book so much attacking religion as it was attacking those who use it for false pretenses. There was a little bit of Adam questioning his faith, but it was more so about him questioning the life that his father had been leading and been pushing him to lead all this time. And Adam has always been aspiring to be like his father, and now he's questioning that. So it didn't quite dive into the complexity of faith, say the way that like Priest does, and I'm okay with that because that takes a very special touch. And not that I don't trust Sarah Kate to take us down a deep road, and I still think that the stuff that Adam was struggling with was worthy of diving into. I just don't think that if you are a Christian or a believer that there's too much to be offended about with this, because it isn't attacking the religion, it's attacking a person who's being a false leader. And I think we can all agree that that is shady and not good, and it didn't feel the same as, you know, having the religion be picked apart, if that makes sense. At least that's what I took at it as a believer myself. I didn't feel that that was what was going on at all. It was more about Adam reevaluating how they got to this point. So I had a great time with this one. I didn't quite connect with this couple the way I have with other couples for Sarah Kate, but I think the series is going to be very good. I'm excited for the other good brothers to get their stories told, and I think it's going to be interesting. So this one I gave it 4 stars. It was a 3.5 on the spice scale for me. There was degradation and praise, spanking, voyeurism, and some bondage in this one. There was trigger warnings of violence to women and an abusive and manipulative parent. Next, I read a new release by Lita Hendricks, her book One Touch, which I had been highly anticipating, and I was very, very sad to not get an arc of it, but it turned out okay. I've shared because I had so many books to read in June and July that like it's okay that I didn't get to read this right that minute. But I did listen to the audio of that while I was actually working on some of my projects, because the audio was released day and day. And also I should have mentioned, I read the arc of AntiHero, but the audiobook for AntiHero is out immediately as well. And it was Teddy Hamilton and Savannah Peachwood, I believe, who did the audiobook for One Touch. This one is about Kate, who is the younger sister of the hero from the first book. And Beckett is not only her brother's best friend, but also her ex-boyfriend's brother. So he is a double forbidden romance for her. But he is also a contractor, and he gets hired to handle the remodel of their family home, which her father no longer is able to live into because he is at a assisted living home for his dementia and Alzheimer's. But their aunt, who had taken care of the father for a long time, this is going to be her home. And so there's a renovation that begins happening, and Kate is determined to help with it. She is a designer in some aspects, and she begins cataloging what they're doing. She starts an Instagram, and this Instagram begins boosting not only Beckett's business, but also really kind of shows him how they could be a team together. So their relationship is definitely fraught with room for trip-ups based on the, like I said, double forbiddenness of this relationship. But there's also some misconceptions that Beckett has in the beginning of this, because he saw Kate as a pushover, because he'd seen the way that his brother had treated her at family events and things before. And so he's very surprised and aroused by this version of Kate that he's seeing now, who is so feisty and pushes back against him, and he can't help but be attracted to it. So what starts as a enemies situation with a lot of ire between them turns into a grudging respect, which turns into a drunk poker night where things go just a little bit too far, but definitely are lots of fun. So I also gave this one 4 stars, and this one was a 4 on the spice scale. Oh my, that's right, there was a lot of naughty stuff in this one. Boy, oh boy. So yeah, dirty talk, spanking, kind of a little bit of voyeurism in this one. It was a fun time. I really liked it. Next, we have our first fanfic that I need to share, and this one is A Lovely Bribery by D.C. Fitzpatrick, and this is a Severus Snape and Hermione Granger pairing. And this one, I've had this one on my Kindle for almost the longest. During this readathon, I was trying to get through some of my oldest fics that I downloaded way back when I first got manacled, and this one I believe I grabbed when I was first diving into Snape and Hermione, when I was tiptoeing into that. And this one, Snape is actually working under Hermione at the Ministry. This was the only job he was able to get. She's actually like the head of potions and some other stuff there, and he works under her. And she's a very bitchy boss to him. So this story is told a la The Proposal, which has Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds in it. And so what happens is there's a marriage law that comes down from the Ministry, and everyone ages 20 to 40 is supposed to get matched up. Now Snape is over 40, but Hermione fits into this, and due to other wizarding laws, depending on who her husband is, she could be forced to give up her job. She would have to listen to the person. They would own her. So still some very patriarchal laws that are in there. And so she's very worried about her position. And so she comes up with a proposal, or a bribe, as it were, to Snape. And if he will pretend that they've been dating for the last 6 months and that there's a chance of them getting married, that she will make sure that he gets the position that he wants, and she will give him a promotion and all of that stuff. And the Ministry is very suspicious of this, but he says, in fact, we're about to go stay with my family for the weekend to tell them about our relationship. Because they are like, well, it had to be a secret because of our positions. We wouldn't want anyone to think he was getting favoritism. And so they begin their relationship. So, or their fake relationship, which starts out very grumpy, and there is a lot of scenes that directly correlate with The Proposal, if you loved that movie. And it is a very slow burn for the first 50%, like very slow, and then it just bursts into flames all around, and had some delightful kinkiness in this one. So it actually had some spanking, there's anal, there was bondage, there was dirty talk, there was just all the spicy stuff in this one. It was so, so good. So yeah, this one was such a fun time. I gave it 4.5 stars, and it was a 4.5 on the spice scale. And there is a bit of a trigger warning for a very manipulative parent, because again, this is a lot like The Proposal, but in this one, Hermione has an abusive dad in this one. So that was kind of interesting. Emotionally abusive dad. Then I listened to an audiobook, Lady Wicked by Scarlett Scott. This is book 4 in her troublesome lady series or whatever. This one I will say is my least favorite in the series so far, and I don't know if I'm continuing it. We'll have to see. It has become cemented to me that this series is full of lots of flashbacks. That is just how it is with how Scarlett Scott writes. In fact, it's not just this series, because another book of hers I read too, every other fucking chapter is a flashback. I'm sorry, I hate when a whole book relies on the previous part of a relationship. I hate it so bad, because it makes it so hard to move on and get into the future. And that was the case with this one, because this one is a second chance romance. It was a secret baby. It was a best friend's brother, and then it became like an enemies situation. So these two had a flirtation when they were young. She lost her virginity to him, and then she saw him leaving his mistress's house. And so when he came to propose to her in like when they were young, she laughed at him and said that he was just a fun diversion because she was afraid of him having cheated on her. Now, fair enough, it was a bit of a miscommunication, but instead of confronting him, she breaks his heart because he was breaking up with his mistress, who he hadn't seen in months since he'd been pursuing her, but she misunderstands. So then she goes to America with her mother and, in fact, has a baby there, doesn't tell him. Now she's back 2 years later, has a baby who's a little over a year old, and needs to be wed to receive her inheritance from her uncle. And so she has to tell Sydney that she has his baby, and he is furious and brokenhearted and can't believe that she kept this secret for 2 years, and all because she'd seen him kiss the cheek of his ex-mistress. And these two just have this hatred for each other that is so out of proportion. And now this baby is here, and he wants this child so much, which I love, by the way. You know, my soul craves it. I adore it. It's beautiful. But he's so cruel to her for what she did. And now I'm mad at her for what she did. But it takes him so long to move on. And we keep doing these flashbacks, seeing how they've hurt each other inadvertently during that time. And we do those flashbacks until almost the end of the book. So we never get to move past the pain because we're seeing another thing where they hurt each other and another thing where they hurt each other all the way through this. It's so sad. And they're just horrible to each other. It's heartbreaking. And by the time they are trying to make it work, I'm just so tired of it that I lose interest with it. Like, it broke my heart. And I was really looking forward to this couple, but this is literally the worst version of a secret baby for me. I hate this situation so much. So I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, although now talking about it, it might be less. And it was a 2.5 on my spice scale. And for trigger warnings, I literally say miscommunication. Now, I know miscommunication is a staple in romance, and I've shared before there are ways to have miscommunication where it works, and then there's the kind where it is the single and sole reason for the entire thing spinning out of control, and it happens again and again and again and again, and these people just don't stop miscommunicating with each other. And I'm like, how are you ever going to make this work? Like, how was this ever going to work? Because it's just a mess. So yeah. All right. Next, we had a few fan fictions here. So I read Breath Mints and Battle Scars by Onyx and Elm, and I did listen to a good chunk of this on the Spotify fic as well. I will have a link to this fic as well as the pod fic down below. This one is a completed fic. So if you would like to try this fic, but, you know, this one isn't too long. This one is about a normal size book, I'd say. I think it's like 400 pages. So it's a normal size one. You can listen to it, which is great. ETL Echo has many fanfics, specifically Dramini ones recorded, which are amazing. So this one is an 8th year fic, which means they are back in school after the final battle. And the Slytherins are kind of persona non grata here. Draco has a lot of damage, and all of the Slytherins who are children of Death Eaters are basically on probation, and they have to send in daily journal entries to show that they're like working through things. And so we have these diary entries of Draco working through a lot of his like issues, and it's very dramatic. So this is a very slow burn between Hermione and Draco, because Hermione gets drawn to Draco because he seems to be as fucked up as she is. So this is a toxic relationship. Like, it literally says this. For a moment, she's almost giddy because Draco Malfoy's been ruined by this war, and he's not as out of place as she is. And yes, he has scars too. He's got an even bigger one. She wonders whether one day they'll compare sizes. So they're a fucked up couple. And like, Draco is happy she's messed up, and she's happy he's messed up. There's some self-harm that happens in this. There's suicidal ideation. There's suicide attempts that happen in this. Draco has an injury that not only is mental, but physically causes him pain constantly, and it's causing him to go a little mad. Like, literally. It's horrible. And watching him and Hermione grow together but then they get frightened by the feelings, and so they attack the other person for it. Like, it's tough. And the way that her friends react is not great in this. And this is a dark Hermione that we see in this one. A very morally gray and upsetting. Like, this book is one of the more toxic ones I've read, because though there's not so much things like non-con or dub-con happening in this, all the sexual things are consensual. When you read some of the darker fics where that stuff is happening, it's usually because, like, the Dark Lord is making you do it, or there's a marriage law that's making it happen, or a spell or a curse. This is just two effed up people taking it out on each other, so that can be difficult to read. But it was also beautiful in a sense as well. Because eventually, when we start to, like, get through all the toxicity and us punishing each other and hurting each other, you get to two people who are also helping each other heal. It's kind of like you need to expel all of the poison before the healing can happen, and we definitely have to live through that with them. So this hurt, guys, it hurt me bad. But I enjoyed it in ways as well. So the audio for this was I gave this 4 stars, and it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. As always, Mel bound this book for me. It had a typeset from Steffi's Bindery on Instagram. Definitely check her out. The art is by Ellie Varin, who you can find on Instagram. So definitely check this out. But you can find this fic free on AO3, and the podfic is on Spotify, like I said. Next, I read Kept Man by Queenie Midas. This one is a Draco and Harry daddy kink fanfic. Now, I've been a bit overwhelmed by some daddy kink and fanfics before, because I find that they go way over the top with it, which I'm sure is just absolutely delightful for people who love it that way. But this fic has been on my Kindle for a very long time because of the daddy kink hashtag for this one. But I think it was done actually very sweetly in this one. So this one has Draco and Harry connecting through a kink magazine. Harry puts out an ad looking for a daddy, and Draco is encouraged to check out this magazine from Pansy. And he ends up checking it out and seeing this and responding to the magazine article, and they end up talking back and forth and sharing what they're kind of into, and they agree to meet up. And when they do, they discover who each other is, realize that they both have the same need for secrecy, but they also have the same desire that is met in the other person. And so very quickly their relationship blossoms. Very quickly they start their sexual dynamic, and I found it to be very beautiful. Harry has some serious mental illness that he's struggling with. He is struggling with self-harm thoughts, as well as hair pulling, as well as some other destructive behaviors, and he actually is not doing well. And finding a daddy who not only is there to support him in like a kink relationship, but also Draco in this is a healer. He's a doctor in this world, and he doesn't try to fix Harry. This isn't about him fixing him, but he does help him talk through some of his struggles, as well as getting him back into therapy and making sure that he's seen to his mental needs. And so in those aspects, Draco is a very wonderful, supportive daddy to him. Like, he is. And it was very beautiful. And I don't think that the kink aspects go over the top in this. There is some really beautiful scenes of it, and actually Harry is helping him put his mansion back together. So Narcissa and Lucius are actually banned from the manor. They're not allowed to come back into it for, I don't remember if it's for a certain amount of years or just for their probation or whatever. So they are actually at one of their homes in France, and so Draco will go to visit them. And now that Harry ends up living with him and being his like live-in boyfriend and a good boy, Harry actually starts helping refurbish the manor. And so this was good. And this one involves, although initially a kind of big reaction from like Ron and Hermione and the friends, there is a really good reaction, honestly, from Narcissa and Lucius, which was beautiful. And the friends come around pretty quickly for them because they see how good these two were for each other. So this was it was a very wholesome daddy kink romance. And if you are maybe like nervous about daddy kink and you're like, I don't know, I think this one does it really, really well, because it still has that taboo feel to it, but it was also just a sweet romance, and they don't stay in character constantly. They don't stay in dynamic all the time, so we get out of that sometimes. So I gave this one a 4-star, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. And of course for kinks, it has daddy kink, BDSM, edging. There is also a switch, so both of them do bottom and top at different times. Although when Draco is bottoming, he's still on top, as it were. But there's a really beautiful scene when that happens too. I loved that. And as I said, there are trigger warnings for self-harm, and I think it said trichotillomania, but hair pulling is one of those here. Then the last fic that I'll mention, this one was just a quick little one. It was the one-shot that I read for the readathon, which if you don't know, a one-shot can basically be any length, but it's usually one chapter, and so therefore it's usually small. And this one was After Midnight by Slither Reese. And this one was an Elaine and Azriel short. And in this one, they are already like a couple, and they actually sneak away to the cabin on a mountain to have a little tryst together. So yeah, this is a short, spicy. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was cute. Okay, so the last 2 books that I read. So Against a Wall by Kate C. Wells, I had to squeeze in this week. This is actually my Patreon read for July, so I won't be reviewing that here. After this video, I actually need to film my dedicated review for the Patreon of this one, so I won't be diving too much into this. The tropes from this one are best friend's brother, small town, kind of he was a bully when she was a kid. She's also like an outcast in this small town, and it's grumpy sunshine, so all of those things. And I did give this one 4.5 stars, and it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. And if you'd like to know my deeper feelings on this, if you join my Patreon, you'll be able to get my dedicated review to this, as well as the backlog of all the other, I think, 14 dedicated reviews that I've done for Patreon. And then the last book that I finished yesterday, which was another book for Patreon, but this one was just one that I annotated for a reviewer or for a patron so I can talk about it. I read Unbreak My Heart by Nicole Jacqueline. So, whoo, guys, the angst was at a 10 with this one. The heartbreak is at a 10 with this one. But, oh gosh, I cried in every chapter for the first 50% of this book. It absolutely gutted me. It gutted me. But it was also so beautiful that I had to give it 5 stars at the end. But there was a specific point in the book. I literally wrote it at one point where I was like, the hero is dead to me. Show me how you're going to win me over after this. Like, where did I say this? I said, let the grovel begin, basically, because it was so painful. But the setup of this book, this is book 1, I think, in Fostering Love, I think is the series, which before anyone even asked, I already downloaded the second book because I can't wait to read about Bram and his romance. I can't wait. But this is about Kate, and she has a best friend named Rachel, and she has this beautiful bond with Rachel and her family. And she actually used to have feelings for Rachel's husband because he was a foster son to her aunt and uncle. So he was kind of a foster cousin to her, but he didn't join her family until he was an older teenager. So it wasn't really inappropriate for her to have feelings for him, but he was not interested in her, or he was a little bit scared by his feelings for her when he was young. And he actually ends up falling for her best friend, Rachel, who was her roommate in college. And when she brings her home to visit the family, he swoops in and basically steals Rachel from her. But he's also in the military, so he's deployed pretty regularly. And Kate basically lives with Rachel when he's gone and helps take care of their 3 children plus 1 on the way. So that is kind of the background of this family, is that whenever Shane is home, she sees them, just kind of on the weekends. But when Shane's away, she's like a second mom to these kids, and she's their godmother, and she's their Auntie Kate. That's who she is. She's Auntie Kate. And then tragically, in the beginning of this book, Rachel gets a call at work that she needs to pick up the oldest child, Sage, from school because Rachel hasn't shown up. This is very puzzling to Kate. So she picks up Sage, and then she takes her home, and the neighbor actually had the 2 younger boys, and she's like, Rachel never came to pick her up. She's like, came to pick them up, she said she'd only be gone 2 hours and it's been 4. And the neighbor is like, I'm not upset, I'm worried. Usually she's back sooner than she says. And Rachel is also 8.5 months pregnant. And it is at this time that Kate gets a phone call from the ER that Rachel has died. The baby has lived. He's perfectly healthy, but Rachel died. And Kate is actually the emergency contact because, you know, Shane is overseas a lot of times, and so Kate is the emergency contact. So she arrives at the hospital and goes to hold her nephew and then has to call Shane and tell him that his wife is dead. And then we skip ahead a year, and there's a lot of tension in the house because Rachel is still there all the time. She watches the kids when Shane has to work. She does her work basically from their house. She has a job where she can work online. And she basically has given up her life to step in and be a mom to these kids. But Shane still continues to try to put her in her place because he doesn't want her taking place, but he also depends on her to help. So on the 1-year anniversary of Rachel's death, Shane goes to get drunk, and Rachel goes to check on him, and they end up fucking, and Rachel ends up pregnant just in time for Shane to need to go on deployment again. And there are so many emotions they go through. Shane is very volatile after this mistake. He doesn't know if he'll be able to love this child that won't be Rachel's, and he feels like Kate maybe had ulterior motives for coming to see him when he was drunk. It's just a very messy, complicated thing. And Shane goes too far many times in this book, and this is where I said I didn't know if I could make it through a couple of times for the things he was saying and doing, and the grief, how it would come out in these really painful ways sometimes. But these two have some wonderful people in their lives, and it's why I immediately need to read more. Their whole family is adopted and fostered siblings. Both the people in his life and in her life. She has older twin brothers that were adopted by her family, and other siblings her parents had adopted at times too. And also not only having her aunt and uncle are Shane's parents. He calls them mom and dad. And, you know, her parent, they have all these people around them who want to help. And they definitely step in when needed and shake some people straight when needed. And they are not alone in anything. And I think that's what just kept my heart so tender, even when Shane was doing some stupid things. He does some things where you're just you can't come back from that. But I think that he does. I think he does. It's very beautiful how it happens. And he does some very romance hero things. After doing some villainous almost things, he does some very romance hero things. And also the children are so perfect in this. They're so wonderful. I love it. I love it. So this is not a book everyone's going to handle. This is not a book everyone's going to love as much as I did, because Shane may push you too far and push you over the edge. But I'm so thankful that Komal asked me to read this book and annotate it for her, and it was 5 stars for me. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. For a couple kinky things, there is pregnant sex that happens in here, as well as some after pregnancy breast play that happens at one point. It's very good sex after pregnancy in here. And then the trigger warnings are, you know, as I said, death of a spouse. There is almost some white fanging happening here, and also being a military spouse. That is a content warning, I would say. And yeah, the angst was a 10, but the book was a 5-star for me. So thank you so much for watching this weekly wrap-up. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to give the video a like. Let me know which of these books you've read. Send me your comments down below. Share this with someone you think needs to see it. and make sure you're subscribed so that you get notified when I upload more. I will see you next time, friends.